Hello, Bravo. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but starting another book only because I just purchased this book and it's very interesting looking. This is The Hour, a novel about Goya by Lion Feuchtwanger. Feuchtwanger? I don't know. It's a Book of the Month Club selection. As you can see, this book has some damage, but I've put a Mylar jacket on this almost destroyed jacket before it gets any worse. And it seems to look better already than the frail piece of cloth it was previously. Let's see what year this is. This is a very short chapter. Since I have short time due to my early work schedule today, I shall only read one chapter. Translated by H.T. Lowe Porter and Francis Fawcett. MCMLI, I'll say that's 1951, maybe 61. I don't know. 51 or 61. One of the two. Maybe it has a copyright date here. 51, I was right. Part 1. Chapter 1. Towards the end of the 18th century, almost everywhere in Western Europe, the Middle Ages had been rooted out. But in the Iberian Peninsula, cut off on 3 sides by the sea, and on the 4th by mountains, they persisted. To drive the Arabs from the peninsula, monarchy and church had centuries before been forced to enter into an indissoluble alliance. Victory was possible only if kings and prelates succeeded in wielding together by the strictest discipline the peoples of Spain. They had succeeded. They had united them in a mystically fervid belief in throne and altar, and this hardness, this unity, had endured. At the end of the 18th century, the Iberian tradition was frozen into a rigidity both tragic and absurd. Even 200 years before, this country's greatest writer had drawn his material from this sinister and grotesque persistence. In the tale of the knight who could not abandon the ancient, now meaningless customs of chivalry, he had created an eternally valid analogy, and his lovable hero, touching and ridiculous, had become famous all over the globe. The Spaniards had laughed over Don Quixote, but had not given up their obsession with tradition. The chivalry of the Middle Ages had lasted longer in the peninsula than anywhere else in Europe. Prowess in arms, heroism carried to the point of madness, and exaggerated gallantry deriving from the veneration of the Virgin Mary. These characteristics remained the ideas of Spain. Chivalrous practices long since obsolete still persisted. Bound up with this warlike habit was something of contempt for learning and reason. Similarly, a monstrous pride, known and notorious throughout the world, general pride of country, individual pride of caste. Christianity itself lost in Spain its cheerful simplicity and assumed a fierce, gloomy, autocratic mien. I don't know how to pronounce it. Mien, I'll say. The church became arrogant, aggressive, masculine, and cruel. And those were its fine points. Thus, at the turn of the century, the country was the most backward in Europe. Its towns, its dress, its gestures, yes, even the faces of the folk, struck the stranger as oddly rigid, relics of a time gone by. Yet on the other side of the mountains, to the north, cut off from Spain by these mountains alone, lay the most lucid, most rational country in the world, France. And over these mountains, in spite of all measures to shut them out, her rationality and suppleness found their way. Beneath the hard-baked surface, the people of the peninsula, very slowly, were changing. At that time, foreign kings ruled over Spain, rulers of French origin, Bourbons, whatever the hell they are. The Spaniards could well force the Bourbons, I'll just say Bourbons because it sounds like whiskey and that just makes everything so cool, to adapt themselves as earlier they had forced the Habsburgs. So where the Habsburgs' chin came from. But the Spanish nobility learned the foreign customs from the French kings and their entourages, and many came to like them. The people, however, while the aristocracy was slowly changing, stuck stubbornly to their old ways, solemnly, zealously. They took over the rights and duties their masters were relinquishing. The noblest sport had always been the bullfight, preserve of the high aristocracy. Only the nobility could take part. Only the nobility look on. Now, when the grandees no longer concerned themselves with bullfighting, the people practiced the savage custom with the greater passion. And as the grandees relaxed somewhat in their manners, the etiquette of the folk became correspondingly stricter. Shoemakers attached importance to being regarded as petty nobility, as hidalgos, and tailors addressed one another with cumbersome titles. Don Quixote had abdicated. Don Quixote had transformed himself into an elegant gentleman from Versailles. Now the people took over his shield and his ramshackle war horse. Sancho Panza became Don Quixote, heroic and ridiculous. Over on the other side of the Pyrenees, and the French beheaded their king and chased their nobility out of the country. Here in Spain, the people deified their monarchs, French though they were in origin and highly unkingly. To the people, king was king, grandee, and while these exalted ones, more and more committed to French customs, had even resigned themselves to the idea of a pact with Republican France, the Spanish people fought enthusiastically on against the godless French, and let themselves be slain for their king, their nobles, and their priests. True, in Spain existed Spaniards who perceived the contradiction in themselves, and these would struggle in their breasts to fight the fight out, twixt the old and modern usage, twixt their feelings and their reason, oft with pain and oft with passion, winning sometimes, yet not always. All right. I guess we'll get to Goya at some point. Yeah, we got the introductory chapter. All right, that's all, bruv. Goodbye.